Welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to learn more about how we can mix our politeness levels together. In the last lesson, we talked about 반존대, which is mixing casual speech into polite speech, but there are still more ways that we can mix our speech levels. So in this lesson, we'll cover more of those details. Again, when in doubt, remember these two things. Mastering the politeness levels is more about understanding how your speech feels than it is simply about memorizing rules. And remember, it's better to sound a bit too polite and therefore awkward than to sound a bit too casual and therefore rude. As learning every possible situation for using politeness levels would take a lifetime, as it does for native Korean speakers, this lesson will only cover some of the most common situations you may encounter. So let's talk about using the yule form together with formal speech. Well, we learned that formal speech is used to give your speech a strong, respectful feel. And in contrast, the yule form, which is informal, has a soft, respectful feel. We also learned that casual speech is used when you're not showing extra respect toward the person you're speaking to, and can have a friendly feel. So keeping that in mind, normally formal speech, which sounds strong and respectful, and casual speech, which sounds friendly, should not be mixed. For example, 제가 해드릴 거야 would sound awkward and incorrect. However, there are times when parts of these forms can be mixed. While we learned that the word 나, meaning I or me, is used together with casual speech, there are situations where you might also hear it used with formal speech. Let's first review these two words, 저 and 나. First, 저 is a humble noun that lowers the speaker down to who they're speaking to. 나, however, does not lower the speaker down, but instead sounds neutral. However, you may encounter some native speakers using 나 together with formal speech. For example, 나는 빌리입니다. Doing this shows two things. First, by using 나, it says, I don't think I need to lower myself down to you by using 저. And second, by using formal speech, it shows, but I should speak formally as this is a formal occasion. So perhaps this could be done by a leader at a company when giving a speech or making an announcement. For example, the president of Korea could use 나 in a formal speech if they don't want to sound as if they're lowering their head to the listener. In other cases, though, it's better to avoid mixing 나 with formal speech. This is because typically the situations where you'd use formal speech don't match with using 나, but are more appropriate for using 저. But you may encounter some native speakers using 나 together with the yule form. For example, 나는 빌리예요. This can be related to how younger and older people might speak differently. For a quick overview, a younger person might say 밥을 먹다, meaning to eat a meal, while an older person might say 식사를 하다. A younger person might say the expression 아니에요 to mean you're welcome, while an older person might say 천만에요. And an older person might use 나 together with the yule form. This also conveys these two things. First, by using 나, I don't think I need to lower myself down to you by using 저. I'm older than you. And two, by using the yule form, but I don't want to sound rude by using casual speech. So keep that in mind in case you hear it. A common question I've received is, what do you do if someone's age and rank are conflicting? For example, what if you outrank someone who's actually older than you? For example, what if you're a new supervisor, but everyone on your team is much older than you? How should you speak toward them? And how should everyone else on your team speak toward you? Who should speak casually, or who should speak politely? Using what we've learned, it might be possible to guess the answer. And you can pause the video here if you'd like to try guessing. Alright, let's look at the answer. If you're a new supervisor over a team that's much older than you, you should speak politely. For example, using formal speech or the yule form, together with honorific speech where appropriate, because they are older than you. But also, your team members, who are older than you, should also speak politely toward you in the same way, because you are their supervisor. This means that due to these conflicting conditions, you would both just speak politely toward each other, at least in the beginning. Now, over time as you get closer, it may become appropriate to lower your speech, or for them to lower their speech. For example, by not using formal speech or honorific speech, but this should not be assumed. So whenever you're unsure, just be polite. Now, we've spent a lot of time learning how formal speech is different from the yule form, but actually these can be mixed sometimes as well, in some situations. For example, you may hear someone say something in formal speech, such as in a speech, or in an advertisement, or on a radio show, but then they switch to using the yule form, and then later say something else again in formal speech. The reason for this is because using only formal speech can sometimes feel too formal. Even when using formal speech is appropriate, it can sound less stiff and therefore a bit more friendly, but still respectful by mixing in the yule form. Note that this does not apply to official speeches or official letters or other very formal situations where it's necessary to only use formal speech, such as in the military. But keep this in mind when you see it. It's simply to change the feeling to be a little bit less stiff and a little more friendly. In fact, let's see an example of that before we go on. This listening practice is a written email. Pay close attention to the verb endings used. 김 선생님, 안녕하세요. Hello. 지난주에 보내주신 자료 잘 받았습니다. I received the data or materials that you sent me last week. 오늘 확인해보니, checking it today, 중간에, in the middle, 잘못된 정보가 약간 있더라고요. There was a little bit of wrong information. This sentence and the next sentence do not use formal speech. 표시해서 보내드리니, I'll mark it and send it to you. 수정 부탁드릴게요. So please correct it. Although this isn't formal, it still isn't rude because it uses humble speech. And here in this sentence, it switches back to formal speech. 천천히 보내주셔도 됩니다. You can send it to me slowly, or more naturally, take your time sending it to me. 좋은 주말 보내세요. Have a nice weekend. So here, using only formal speech may have sounded a bit too unfriendly and too formal, so mixing in a little bit of the yule form can make this sound a bit more friendly while still being very respectful.
김 선생님, 안녕하세요. 지난주에 보내주신 자료 잘 받았습니다. 오늘 확인해 보니 중간에 잘못된 정보가 약간 있더라고요. 표시해서 보내드리니 수정 부탁드릴게요. 천천히 보내주셔도 됩니다. 좋은 주말 보내세요.
So we've covered formal speech as well as mixing formal speech, but should you use formal speech or not? Well, a good way to tell whether you should use formal speech or not is to think about how close do you feel with someone else. For example, if you're meeting a former teacher, it would probably be fine to speak politely using the yule form, along with honorific speech, etc., as you may feel some amount of closeness with them. Or when speaking to your new boss, since there may not be any feeling of closeness, formal speech would be more appropriate. And when giving any sort of public speech, formal speech is typically used as you may not feel close with the listeners. This also applies to news broadcasts, religious sermons, and more. So again, you can consider how close you feel with someone when you decide whether you should speak formally to them. Next, let's talk about celebrities, or just anyone who's appearing on television or radio or in any sort of media. Keep in mind that people may speak differently to each other on or off camera. For example, celebrities who might be close with each other in their real lives may choose to speak more politely in front of the camera. This could be because viewers who aren't aware of the celebrity's friendship could feel that they're being disrespectful by using casual speech. So you may occasionally catch people on television, etc., slipping up their politeness levels. And I don't just mean mixing them, but using casual speech. And if you're paying attention to this sort of thing, you will find it quite often. So before we go on to some notes for this lesson, try to answer this quick quiz on your own. You can pause the video here and then resume it when you're ready for the answers. Here are the answers. The first one is true. Mastering the politeness levels is more about understanding how your speech feels than it is simply about memorizing rules. The next one is false. An older person might use na together with the yule form, which conveys that they want to speak casually and more friendly with someone, but that they don't want to sound rude. Actually, they're simply conveying that they don't think they need to use 저 because they're older, not necessarily that they want to sound casual or friendly. And the last question is true. 저, meaning I or me, cannot be used with casual speech. Throughout these lessons, I've tried to include every major question I've received as a teacher about politeness levels. But there will still be more questions and details that are not covered in this course. For example, how would you speak to your new boss who's actually a baby? Remember though, if you keep in mind the feel that each form has, this will help you to navigate any situation you may encounter. Note that you would still speak as respectfully as possible when meeting your new boss baby. So in this lesson, we learned more about how you can mix your speech levels, and in the next lesson, we're going to talk about how you can make polite requests. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time. 그럼 다음에 또 봐.